Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Global Arrival. Only I Choose Armor. Chapter 41. No, no more. What did you say? The monster in the secret realm is gone. At this time, listen to the words of the senior management of Tianai Academy. The dean couldn't help but look stunned, and then stared at the man in front of him. His hands subconsciously stretched out and pressed on the other person's shoulders. He said loudly, his eyes filled with astonishment. He looked at the man in front of him in astonishment. At the same time, he subconsciously released his own powers and attacked into the secret realm, observing carefully. However, what surprised him was that he didn't seem to feel any resistance and it was flowing smoothly. This surprised the dean, and he began to believe what the man in front of him said more and more. Gone. At this time, when the dean was secretly exploring this secret realm. At this time, everyone behind him heard it and slowly came to his senses. He murmured subconsciously with a surprised look on his face. At the same time, Zhao Shui and the proclaimer seemed to have thought of something and subconsciously looked towards Yi Feng. Although logically speaking, this is very unlikely. But they felt inexplicably that this matter had something to do with Yi Feng. Maybe it was Yi Feng who did it. Thinking about the other party's cruel intentions, the more Zhao Shui thought about it, the more it seemed possible. Yi Feng couldn't help but roll his eyes. You just go in, and all the monsters inside are gone. Do you want to be so cruel? At this time, Yi Feng also released his armor state. He returned to his normal appearance, feeling Zhao Shui's sight at this time. He couldn't help but smile softly and slump his shoulders, indicating that there are not many monsters left inside. It's not all his fault. Besides, it's not all gone, there are still some alive. Cub. Some of them were reserved for future Tianai superpower users to undergo trials to improve their strength. Zhao Shui obviously didn't know what Yi Feng meant, seeing Yi Feng's actions. I couldn't help but blink, and at the same time I was extremely happy. Fortunately, okay, I have a good relationship with Yi Feng. There should be no problem. Thinking of the miserable Lu Yi and Wang Ao, Zhao Shui couldn't help but shook her head. Even though he was not dead at that time, he was still under the attack of Warcraft and the chaos of Warcraft. Even if he wasn't beaten to death by Yi Feng, he would still be trampled to death. Anyway, Zhao Shui didn't think that the other party was still alive. And just when Zhao Shui was thinking about it, the announcer on the side was not as thoughtful as Zhao Shui thought. The focus is also different from Zhao Shui. At this moment, he looked at Yi Feng and sighed secretly. If it was really him, it would be really scary. His strength has become stronger again. Whispered softly. Recalling that when Yi Feng first entered, he was only half a level B. Now after entering the secret realm, he has such strength as soon as he comes out. This growth rate is really too fast. At this time, although the others did not think as much as Zhao Shui and the proclaimer. But when I heard the words of Tianai's senior officials, I was secretly shocked. Subconsciously he looked towards Yi Tian. How about it? At this time, Mr. Zhang looked at the dean who had withdrawn his thoughts. He spoke. Indeed, except for some Warcraft cubs, the other powerful Warcraft are gone and cannot sense the opponent's breath. The dean came to his senses after hearing this. He nodded and spoke slowly. At the same time, he subconsciously looked towards Yi Tian. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. Others heard the same thing. They all looked at Yi Tian. When Yi Tian saw this, he chuckled, shaked his head. His eyes were also full of shock and disbelief. He looked at Yi Feng in amazement. Even now, he can't come back to his senses. Subconsciously recalling what happened before. Boom! I saw Yi Feng's soft drink falling down. Suddenly a dazzling light bullet flew out directly. Blast towards the four escaping monsters. The devil tiger who was escaping at this time was secretly glad that he escaped quickly. Fortunately, I was smart and didn't stay. I even rushed forward stupidly. That obvious trick couldn't fool me. Feeling proud of his own wit. However, at this moment, Mohu seemed to notice something and subconsciously stopped. Turn your head and look. This sight made Mohu a little dumbfounded. Feeling the power that was enough to destroy everything, he said somewhat dully. Not good. Then he seemed to think of something and came back to his senses instantly. He said loudly, and then he was about to leave quickly. Although there was only a brief loss of concentration for 0.05 seconds, it was still too late. No, the demon tiger roared unwillingly and hit directly. Then in an instant, the 3 half-step A-level monsters were turned into ashes. 2 dead to die, and the early A-level monsters were directly hit hard. Dying. Gudong. Seeing this scene, Yi Tian and others swallowed subconsciously. Looking at Yi Feng in shock. Especially Yi Tian, subconsciously touched his face. Yi Feng was able to kill him. Does that mean that with the power of other people, Yi Feng can also kill him? Thinking of this, Yi Tian couldn't help but fell silent. But at this time, Yi Feng was not idle, he came directly in front of the devil tiger. Then he pressed on Mohu's head, closed his eyes slightly, and directly used his powers to search Mohu's memory. Suddenly information appeared in Yi Feng's mind. Yi Feng directly ignored the irrelevant information. Got the information Yi Feng wanted. After a few seconds, open your eyes. A hint of understanding flashed in Yi Feng's eyes. So this is awe. No wonder that as the largest secret realm in Tianai City, there are only a few hundred monsters. It turned out that many magical beasts were sacrificed or captured by the Nether Demon. And that's why Kubisho was able to have a little brother of Warcraft at that time, that's why he brought him from the secret realm of Tianai. Put it in the token, and then slipped out without Yi Tian noticing. But then the 2 Nether Demons left behind seemed to notice something and left directly. This devil tiger is left to guard this place. As for the sacrifice, he probably wanted Lufa to come. As for why he left, he probably realized that Kupixiu was dead. When I left, I also took some monsters with me, so the quantity and quality of monsters were greatly reduced. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so easy to win. But for Yi Tian, this is not the case. Fortunately, according to Warcraft's memory of the 2 Nether Demons, Yi Feng also knew who those 2 were. After withdrawing his thoughts, Yi Feng slowly stood up. A smile on his face. Yi Feng, how's the matter? At this time, Yi Tian and others also came to their senses. He came to Yi Feng, looked at Yi Feng, and said. A serious look on his face. When Yi Feng heard about it, he didn't hide any secrets and told all the information he got. It's not an important thing anyway. And listening to Yi Feng's words, Yi Tian couldn't help but frown. Are the 2 masterminds missing? Yi Feng, what will you do next? He whispered subconsciously. Then he seemed to think of something and looked at Yi Feng and then spoke. A serious look on his face. When Zhao Qing and others heard this, they subconsciously looked towards Yi Feng. What do you want to do? Of course we have to cut the grass and root out the roots. There are still some monsters left in this secret realm, and it's hard to get in once. Yi Feng didn't just let them go. Instead of keeping them as slaves to the Nether Demon, he wanted to improve his own strength. Thinking of this, Yi Feng subconsciously touched the summoner. He said with a smile on his face. Then the fire sword slowly appeared in Yi Feng's hand, and at the same time he directly put away the magic crystal on the ground. Then something happened that Yi Tian, Zhao Qing and others would never forget. Eradicate the roots. Do you want to? At this time, listen to Yi Feng's words. Yi Tian slowly came back to his senses and looked at the burning sword in Yi Feng's hand. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He said with a look of surprise and uncertainty. Zhao Qing and the guards behind him seemed to have thought of something, and their hearts were filled with astonishment. Subconsciously he looked towards Yi Feng, confused. Although the monsters gathered in the center were basically solved by Yi Feng and them, and Yi Feng also killed many monsters along the way. But there are still other monsters in the secret realm of Tianai. Because of the fighting, he had already fled far away from here. So Yi Feng means, that's right, that's what you think, kill all these monsters. Listening to Yi Tian's words and feeling the sights and expressions of Yi Tian and others, Yi Feng nodded. He spoke directly, a smile on his face. Listening to Yi Feng's affirmative answer, even Yi Tian couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, secretly frightened by Yi Feng's thoughts. Why didn't I realize Yi Feng was so ruthless before? Could it be that awakening inspired some hidden attributes of Yi Feng? Just when Yi Tian was thinking secretly. At this time, listening to Yi Feng's words, Zhao Qing slowly came back to his senses and sighed softly. He secretly said that it was true. These monsters are hiding. It will not be easy for us to find these monsters for a while. And as you said, the two behind-the-scenes ghost demons have left this secret realm, which is a hidden danger to Tianai City and even the entire Kyushu and the world. We don't have much time left. Then Zhao Qing seemed to think of something, and his beautiful eyebrows couldn't help but frown. Looking at Yi Feng, he slowly spoke. You must know that Kubisho has the power of an early B level, and he is the weakest among them. It's hard to imagine what the overall strength of these nether demons is. I'm afraid it's more serious than she thought. Zhao Qing was worried at the thought of such a terrifying guy running out of the secret realm. At the same time, I don't understand how these nether demons escaped. According to Yi Tian, Mr. Zhang and Dean should be guarding the cracks. Is there more than one crack? Although I don't know what happened, but no matter what, the top priority is to find them. There is not much time left for them. Thinking of this and finally speaking, Zhao Qing looked at Yi Feng seriously. The others heard this and nodded subconsciously. However, what shocked Zhao Qing was, isn't this simple? Yi Feng calmly took out a token with a simple deficit engraved on it. Astonishingly, it was Kubisho's token from before. They used this token to command the monsters in this secret realm. Mental pressure. It's easy to call out the remaining monsters. Yi Feng said lightly. Sure enough, the nether demon is indeed a nether demon. Even in this world, he is a tyrannical existence, superior to others. These monsters trapped in the secret realm, even a few ghost demons, can enslave them. This is the difference in strength, bloodline, and level. Shaking his head, Yi Feng threw away these messy thoughts. Then, without waiting for Yi Tian and others to say anything, he directly used his own powers to activate them. Not long afterward, boom, 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 rumbling sounds came one after another, and then hundreds of monsters were seen rushing towards here quickly. It didn't take long to come together. But it is a bit far away from Yi Feng and others. At the same time, his eyes were filled with confusion. What about Master Netherworld Demon and Master Demon Tiger? Where? Who called them here? Looking at the humans not far away, the monsters looked confused, even a little uneasy. It actually succeeded, but it seems that we have to fight again. At this time, Zhao Qing saw this scene. Said subconsciously. Then he seemed to think of something and came back to his senses. Looking at these monsters, although most of them are C level, there are also many B level monsters. After adding the situation on their side, Zhao Qing couldn't help but cheer up, shook his head, and said. Even Yi Tian clenched his fists with a serious look on his face. However, why go to all this trouble? Deal with them directly, and then we'll get out early. There is just enough energy left to use this move. Yi Feng shook his head and took a step forward slowly. Looking at this scene, his expression condensed slightly. Smiling slightly, he spoke slowly. The right hand held the burning sword, and it fell with Yi Feng's words. Suddenly, the fire sword seemed to be wrapped in flames, and the surrounding temperature seemed to be rising. Seeing this scene, Zhao Qing, Yi Tian and others couldn't help but be stunned. Then Yi Feng smiled, looked at these monsters, and rushed forward. Fire sword technique. I saw that these monsters had not come back to their senses. Yi Feng came directly in front of the opponent and rushed into the group of these monsters. Continuously slashing, various explosion sounds suddenly came. The sword light filled the air, as if it enveloped the entire place. Then they rushed straight forward with swords and passed through the center. Then he appeared behind these monsters, squatting slightly on the ground, holding the fire sword in his right hand. And behind, boom, a violent explosion sounded behind Yi Feng, and sparks flew everywhere. Gudong. Looking at this scene, Yi Tian, Zhao Qing and others couldn't help but swallowed subconsciously. So strong. His face was full of shock. Done. After doing this, Yi Feng stood up slowly and turned around slightly. Looking at Yi Tian, Zhao Qing and others said softly. At the same time, he directly sucked all the magic crystals present into the summoner, and prepared to digest them when he went home. Let's go out, I feel like someone is waiting for us outside. Afterwards, Yi Feng slowly walked towards everyone's expressions and chuckled. Call. As his thoughts returned, Yi Tian breathed out lightly. He took a deep look at Yi Feng. Then he felt Mr. Zhang's gaze and didn't wait for Mr. Zhang to say anything. Yi Tian shook his head and spoke first. Actually, you might not believe it if I tell you this, but. At this time, Yi Tian slowly came back to his senses. He recovered his thoughts and glanced at Yi Feng, who had a calm expression on his face. Then he walked towards Mr. Zhang, just about to say something. However, what made Yi Tian a little dumbfounded was that Mr. Zhang was nowhere to be seen at this time. I saw that the place where Mr. Zhang was standing was already empty. Where are the people? Seeing this scene, Yi Tian said a little confused. Could there be an enemy attack? The two nether demons who left the secret realm earlier appeared. Thinking of this, Yi Tian couldn't help but feel nervous. He looked around subconsciously. However, there was no sign of the nether demon at this time. There were only people with astonished faces and Yi Feng, who was extremely calm. Seeing this scene, Yi Tian became more and more confused. Old Zhang has gone in. I guess I want to go inside and observe it myself. The dean came back to his senses at this time and listened to Yi Tian's words. He slowly came back to his senses. Then he walked towards the secret realm, passed through the crack, and walked directly into the secret realm. Going in. Observe for yourself. Do you want to see it with your own eyes and get it certified? Yi Tian came to his senses after hearing this. He breathed a sigh of relief. Said subconsciously, "Are you afraid that your perception will be affected by some special energy in the secret realm? But this is normal, after all, this is a rare thing for anyone. After all, there are very few warcraft left in the secret realm, which is indeed a very rare thing. This is the first time in the 50 years since the change occurred. I can't tolerate Mr. Zhang's repeated confirmation. And this is exactly the opposite, the impact of this matter is so great. Yi Feng's behavior is so shocking and unbelievable. Be bold." Thinking of this, Yi Tian felt a lot relieved, but at the same time he was a little worried. I don't know if I should tell what happened in the secret realm. Yi Feng is so talented. It doesn't matter to Mr. Zhang and Dean, he can still be trusted by Yi Tian. Only, thinking of this, Yi Tian turned his head slightly and glanced at the people behind him. There are many people with mixed eyes. If these people hear it and spread it, it doesn't seem to be a good thing. After all, there are still many enemies in Kyushu. If those dark forces discover Yi Feng's talent, you may attract many enemies to attack you. Thinking of this, Yi Tian frowned tightly. So should I say it? Should I say it, or should I not say it? Although Yi Tian was very tangled in his heart, his expression on the surface was still very calm. At least there was nothing that could be seen from Yi Tian's expression. Shaking his head, Yi Tian took back his mind. Then he turned around and walked toward the secret realm. When the dean saw this scene, he couldn't help but frown. It seemed that Captain Yi Tiany's expression just now seemed a little strange. But he didn't say much and followed closely. Others saw this and followed closely. They swarmed into the cracks in the secret realm, or should be more reasonable, the big hole in the secret realm, and walked into the secret realm through this big hole. It's just that when the superpowers who came over passed by Yi Feng, they looked a little weird. Obviously they recognized Yi Feng. After all, they still knew about Master Yi Feng, a famous playboy in Tianai City. Although I may not have recovered at first, but then I suddenly realized that I remembered. Isn't this man the son of Yi Tian, the captain of the Tianai City Guards, the famous Yi Feng Master Yi? Apparently, Yi Feng seemed a little confused when he chose the armor ability. It seemed that he was curious that Yi Feng would have an armor ability. After all, Yi Feng's appearance in armor just now was still deeply engraved in their hearts. Let everyone be surprised, but he didn't say much, and just followed the team straight into the secret realm. Not long after, only Zhao Qing, Zhao Shui and Yi Feng were left here. The rest of the people all walked into the secret realm, their eyes full of curiosity and disbelief. Aren't you going in? Not curious. At this time, Zhao Qing looked at Zhao Shui, who did not follow everyone into the secret realm. Can't help but blink, he said with a curious look on his face. Could it be said that Zhao Shui is not interested in this matter? However, no, I don't have to. Of course I'm curious, but for something that's already certain, what else is there to be curious about? It's more like horror than curiosity. Zhao Shui shook his head and spoke slowly. A pair of eyebrows were stared at Yi Feng with a very serious expression. Although this is indeed unbelievable, Zhao Shui believes it. And she was very sure that it was Yifeng who did this in 1989. Recalling what happened in the World of Warcraft forest, Zhao Shui looked affirmative. When Zhao Qing heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. A look of surprise on his face. I really didn't expect Zhao Shui to say this. It's not that I'm not curious. But since you already have the answer, there is no need. Because Yifeng went in. It's more surprising than curious. Obviously Zhao Shui has already guessed the answer. It seems that she has a deep impression on Yifeng. Thinking of this, Zhao Qing shook his head and slowly came back to his senses. Said softly, and Zhao Shui didn't know what Zhao Qing was thinking at this time. At this time, she watched Yifeng move forward and leave without looking back. He came back to his senses instantly. Take a step forward subconsciously. Where are you going? Aren't you going to stay and wait for them? After all, Uncle Yi is here too. Looking at Yifeng, he slowly spoke. A serious look on his face. Yifeng paused slightly. It's not necessary. The matter in the secret realm has come to an end. There will be nothing to do in a short time, so there is no need to stay here. Besides, just because he is here, I can leave with peace of mind. And I have other things to do. Turning his head slightly, he spoke slowly. He was also eager to go home to consume the power of the magic crystal, improve his strength, and see if he could unlock the two armors of Fang and King Kong. Let your strength be enhanced. After all, Yifeng knew that two nether demons had appeared in the real world, and they were very powerful. Therefore, Yifeng must mention his strength before they act, but he has no time to stay here. With this in mind, Yifeng turned and left directly after finishing speaking. Zhao Shui disappeared in the blink of an eye, in Zhao Qing's eyes. Only the two girls were left looking at each other. What I'm curious about is, are all the monsters in this secret realm really gone? What's shocking is that in such a short period of time, his strength has improved so quickly. At this time, he has at least B-level strength, maybe even stronger. At this time, looking at Yifeng's leaving figure, Zhao Shui slowly came back to her senses. Said softly. A serious look on his face. Obviously, horror is more suitable for Zhao Shui's clarity at this time than curiosity. In the end, even more so. You just entered the secret realm, and when you came out, you had at least B-level strength. If you tell me this, no one will believe it. Anyway, she is. Believe it. Thinking of this, Zhao Shui couldn't help but shook her head and sighed softly. I really don't know how he did it. It seems that you are also very impressed by him. At this time, Zhao Qing, who was on the side, saw this scene and slowly came back to his senses. He turned his head slightly and looked at Zhao Shui. He spoke slowly, with a serious look on his face. If this were not the case, Zhao Shui would not be surprised at this time, but suspicious. Thinking of this, Zhao Qing looked at Zhao Shui more seriously. Oh, yes, earlier, Aunt Zhang asked me to take good care of Yifeng and asked me to delay the trial time and protect him. I didn't expect that in the end, I would be taken care of. Zhao Shui slowly came back to her senses after hearing this. He nodded slightly and smiled bitterly. He spoke with a bitter look on his face. If you tell me this, no one will believe it. The person who was supposed to be protected was now being taken care of by the person he was protecting. Not even Aunt Zhang expected this scene. I would have thought Yifeng could be so awesome. Thinking of this, Zhao Shui sighed secretly. However, what shocked Zhao Shui was. After hearing what he said, Zhao Qing couldn't help but smile bitterly. Seeing this scene, Zhao Shui couldn't help but be startled. Teacher Zhao, are you also? Then he looked at Zhao Qing and spoke slowly. Yes, when Mr. Zhang left, he asked me to keep an eye on Yifeng to prevent him from being plotted by other trialists. But what I didn't expect was that Yifeng not only solved the Warcraft rebellion, but even saved me. In the secret realm, if it weren't for her, I would have died long ago. How could it be possible to appear here and see this sun? Zhao Qing heard this and nodded. He spoke slowly. At the end of his speech, he subconsciously stretched out his hand and squeezed it, as if he wanted to hold the sunshine in his hand. His expression was somewhat complicated. Who could have thought that things would turn out like this? Let's just say things are unpredictable. I didn't expect you, Teacher Zhao, to be like this. Zhao Shui couldn't help but sigh softly after hearing this. At the same time, he subconsciously recalled what happened in the World of Warcraft forest. This was indeed the case at that time. But she didn't expect that the situation in the secret realm would be like this. She thought Zhao Qing had played a certain role in helping. In this way, she still thinks too much. The secret realm of Tianai was scarier than she imagined. At the same time, she was amazed at Yifeng's strength and the speed of its growth. So, the two of us still have some sympathy for each other. Then, Zhao Shui seemed to think of something. Then he spoke. Do we share the same suffering? That's true. Zhao Shui couldn't help but be stunned and murmured subconsciously. But I can tell you that Yifeng's strength at this time is not as strong as you think, or his level is not as high as you think. At this time, he is only mid-level B. Then he seemed to think of something and smiled softly. Looking at Zhao Shui, he slowly spoke. A smile on his face. She can't be the only one who knows about this, she also has to scare others. And it makes you healthier, which is a good thing, right? And after listening to Zhao Qing's words, Zhao Shui's expression was shocked. What? The emotion was stronger than Zhao Qing imagined, and he was stunned in place. A blank look on his face. Originally, she thought that if Yifeng could destroy these monsters, his strength would be at least a level, so that he could dominate the entire field. But I really didn't expect that Yifeng was only mid-level B. Doesn't this mean that Yifeng's combat power is off the charts? Thinking of this, Zhao Shui didn't know whether to cry or laugh. The funny thing is that Yifeng's strength improved not as fast as she imagined. But the sad thing is that this seems to be not as good as improving the strength level quickly. The mid-level B level already has this kind of combat power, what about the A level? Wouldn't it be contrary to heaven? Thinking of this, Zhao Shui looked surprised and uncertain. When Zhao Qing saw this scene, he couldn't help but smile. Sure enough, only sharing happy things will make people happier. Then, without waiting for Zhao Shui to say anything, Zhao Qing spoke immediately. Tell Zhao Shui everything that happened in the secret realm. Suddenly, Zhao Shui's expression was constantly changing. I think the two of us can be sisters, actually. And just when Yifeng left directly and went back to Yi Mansion, Zhao Qing and Zhao Shui were communicating with each other. At this time, within the secret realm of Tianai, Mr. Zhang took the lead to enter the secret territory of Tianai. Looking at the somewhat empty secret realm in front of him, Mr. Zhang already had a guess in his heart. Originally, he didn't doubt Yi Tian's words much, he just came in to make sure it was 100% true. Now that I see this scene, I feel even more certain in my heart. I'm afraid all the monsters in the secret realm are empty. But he closed his eyes and began to explore. And just as Mr. Zhang closed his eyes to explore, Yi Tian also walked in. Seeing this scene, he didn't say much. Instead, he took a step forward slightly and stood behind Mr. Zhang. Standing quietly, watching this scene in front of you silently. At the same time, I began to think secretly in my heart, how should I report the situation of this incident? How to say, is the best. It is the best for Yifeng's future, and the negative impact on Yifeng is the lowest. Did you choose to partially conceal it? Still tell the truth. Thinking of this, Yi Tian fell into deep thought. Thinking secretly. For Yi Tian, Yifeng is naturally very important to him, as he is the only child in their family. Naturally, I don't want anything to happen to Yifeng, and I want to maximize my benefits. And just when Yi Tian fell into deep thought, thinking secretly. At this time, the escort team, Tianai Academy and a group of civilian superpowers who came over also came in one after another. The secret realm that was originally a little empty suddenly became more popular. The people who came in looked at the scene in front of them and the empty scene around them. His originally tense expression instantly relaxed. At the same time, I already have a general understanding of the situation in the secret realm. I guess it's true. There are really very few monsters left in this secret realm, not many left. Only a few cubs left. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, they would have been surrounded by many monsters at this time. There are all kinds of monsters here, how can you be so calm? How could it be so empty? And just when everyone was thinking secretly, a voice came faintly. It directly confirmed everyone's inner guesses. That's indeed what happened. I can feel that there are really not many monsters in this secret realm. But these are actually not the point. The point is, I saw Mr. Zhang slowly opening his eyes and looking at the scene in front of him. He nodded slightly and spoke slowly, a serious look on his face. Even though it's hard to believe in your heart, it's true. This is especially true when you open your eyes and see some Warcraft cubs passing by in the distance. It has been completely accepted. After all, this was difficult to see in the past. The only ones that could be seen were mature monsters. It was obviously difficult to see cubs of monsters like these. Only in this case, when the number of Warcraft is greatly reduced, can it be seen so easily. And it's not just that. Thinking of this, Mr. Zhang couldn't help but pause slightly. After listening to Mr. Zhang's words, everyone present subconsciously came to their senses and nodded at the same time. It is as expected, but then he couldn't help but be stunned. Hearing what Mr. Zhang said, he couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at Mr. Zhang with a confused look. What's the point? The point is that I feel that the power of this secret realm has been greatly weakened. This is not only because there are not many Warcraft left, but also because of the fierce war and the fact that the maximum limit of the secret realm's aura has been exceeded. As a result, the power in the secret realm is reduced. It is estimated that the level of the Tianai secret realm will be greatly reduced in the future. Feeling the attention of everyone, Mr. Zhang spoke directly. At the end, he looked at Yi Tian with a strange expression. What on earth did you do in there? To beat a secret realm like this, it will be completely disabled. In the past, Tianai secret realm could be regarded as an A-level secret realm. But after this time, Mr. Zhang didn't think that Tianai secret realm could return to its original appearance. It is estimated that it is no more than B-level, or even the bottom of B-level. Who would have thought that the most powerful secret realm in Tianai would turn into a secret realm with the lowest level just because someone entered it in the blink of an eye? Listening to Mr. Zhang's words, everyone quickly figured out the key. He couldn't help but look at Yi Tian in silence. You are really punishing me. And feel the sight of everyone, and feel the sight of Mr. Zhang. Yi Tian thought about it again and again, then slowly took a step forward and walked to Mr. Zhang. This is actually what happened. After looking at the superpower behind him, Yi Tian started to communicate using only a voice that could be heard by the two of them. They are Mr. Zhang, the Dean of Tianai College. Obviously not intending for others to hear. At first, the two of them didn't feel much at all. After all, they already know about the Warcraft forest and have a preliminary understanding of Yi Feng's strength. Hearing it now only deepens this impression. However, hearing the last. What? It was your son Yi Feng who solved the matter in Tianai's secret realm. You and your escorts were just showing off the whole time. It was his fault that the secret realm became like this. Mr. Zhang and Dean couldn't help but exclaimed. It directly attracted the attention of everyone present, and they all looked over subconsciously. Seeing this scene and hearing these words, Yi Tian couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. You people, didn't I tell you to speak softly, and if you can't communicate with your thoughts, keep it confidential? Why did you speak so loudly? Doesn't everyone know this? It's over. This is different from what he thought. At this time, Yi Tian was dumbfounded. Everyone was dumbfounded and stood there stupidly. He looked at Mr. Zhang and the dean dumbfounded. You promised to speak in a low voice. Why are you shouting? It doesn't matter if you are loud, but shouting is too much. Originally, according to Yi Tian's idea, after Yi Tian thought about it again and again, the most ideal and best situation was only let the senior management know, otherwise if no one knows, won't it delay Yi Feng from getting the best resources after he enters Tianai College? But if everyone knows about it, if the big talk spreads and attracts the knowledge of those dark organizations, then Yi Feng will become the primary target of those people. As an enemy, it is impossible to watch your mortal enemy grow up, and you will definitely try your best to nip the danger in the cradle. So by then, Yi Feng must be in danger. And similarly, as Yi's father, he naturally doesn't want to put Yi Feng in danger. But it can't be that everyone knows, otherwise Yi Feng won't get any benefits. The best thing is to let the other party know about Yi Feng's strength and qualifications, so that only the top management knows about it and no one else knows about it. It's a bit like Yi Feng's previous world, where only the country knows about those high-level talents, and others don't. This is the best and the situation that maximizes benefits. However, what Yi Tian never expected was The two of them actually shouted out. The voice is so loud. This is hard to hear even if you don't want to hear it. It's obviously a good idea in my mind. At this time, Yi Tian slowly came back to his senses. Looking at this scene, he shook his head, sighed softly. He spoke slowly. At this time, listening to the words of the dean and Mr. Zhang, everyone present except for the 15 guards who followed Yi Tian into the secret realm. The others couldn't help but trembled when they heard this. Subconsciously looking towards Yi Tian, he kept blinking his eyes with a look of astonishment on his face. His eyes were full of confusion. Did they hear it right? I remember, didn't Mr. Yi of the Yi family wake up just in the morning? And they also saw it just now. Yi Feng seemed to have awakened the armor power. They also felt a little pity. They thought that the Yi family was one of the best families in Tianai, but they never expected that their child would have armor powers. But now you tell me, the person who crippled this new Oda secret realm, the strongest secret realm in Tianai city, is Yi Feng. A person who has just woken up less than a day ago. What? Are you sure you're not kidding us? When did armor have such strong potential? So perverted. Thinking of this, everyone present could not help but become somewhat silent. Staring straight at Yi Tian. A look of disbelief. At this time, the dean and Mr. Zhang also came to their senses. He exhaled slowly and looked towards Yi Tian. Seeing this, Yi Tian couldn't help but shook his head. Sighed softly. They all knew it, but fortunately, they didn't care anymore. Anyway, these people came here spontaneously, and they are all supernatural beings with righteous hearts. Just let them keep their mouths shut afterwards. There should be no one colluding with the dark organization. Thinking of this, Yi Tian nodded secretly. Make up your mind and don't hesitate. He spoke directly and told everything that happened in the secret realm. Everyone present was amazed and had wonderful expressions on their faces. 3 minutes later, everyone slowly came to their senses. I didn't expect that not only the matter in the World of Warcraft forest was solved by Yi Feng, but now even the matter in the secret realm is solved by Yi Feng. It seems that Yi Feng's talent is stronger than we thought, or the armor ability may not be as simple as we thought. Then Mr. Zhang slowly came back to his senses and breathed out softly. He spoke slowly. At the end of his speech, his expression was filled with emotion. The dean on the side nodded subconsciously. At the same time, the determination in his heart became stronger and stronger, and he must concentrate all excellent resources on Yi Feng. Just give Yi Feng the green light to go all the way. 100 years, no, it should be a once-in-a-thousand-year genius, so you must cherish it. At the very least, we can't let other countries take it away. Don't let this qualification go to waste. Thinking of this, the dean of Tianai College looked determined. And just when the dean secretly made up his mind, it was Yi Tian's turn to be a little confused. The World of Warcraft forest you are talking about is... Listening to the dean's words, Yi Tian couldn't help but be stunned. He said with a surprised look on his face. What happened to the Warcraft forest? Why didn't Zhao Qing tell him? Could it be, as you thought, the nether demon who ran out earlier went to the Warcraft forest? Seeing this, Mr. Zhang spoke directly. Tell all the situation at that time. Confirming Yi Tian's guess, Yi Tian was stunned. It is as expected. At the same time, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. It turns out that this is how Yi Feng and Zhao Qing came in. He had previously wondered how Mr. Zhang would let them in. It turned out that they came in through the token, in another way. And this kid Yi Feng has half a B level power as soon as he wakes up. But when I think about the fact that he is already in the mid-level B level, there seems to be nothing to be surprised about. When I think about it this way, it feels normal. Then Yi Tian seemed to think of something again, and he couldn't help but feel annoyed. Why didn't you tell me earlier? He couldn't help but clapped his hands and sighed. If he had known that Mr. Zhang and the others were so impressed by Yi Feng, there would be no need for him to tell about the secret realm. Just let them guess. Anyway, they can still make them pay attention to Yi Feng. Thinking of this, Yi Tian couldn't help but shook his head. A look of helplessness on his face. Seeing this scene, Mr. Zhang and Dean couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. You don't want to tell them the truth yet, do you? At this time, everyone present was not as free as these three people, watching the three people talking and laughing. At this time, the people behind him were numb and stood there with blank faces. I do not know what to say. Listen to what Mr. Zhang and Yi Tian say to each other. At this time, everyone looked a little numb. At first they thought the secret realm was solved by Yi Feng, but this made them shocked. Somewhat numb. It is really unimaginable that a person who has just awakened has such power. It can penetrate the entire secret realm and completely destroy a good secret realm. But before they came to their senses, you told us that this was not all. This is just one of them. There is also an incident in the World of Warcraft forest. When they came, they heard that something happened in the World of Warcraft forest, and they didn't take it seriously at first. Now it seems that it is true. And it was solved by Yi Feng. If you think about it carefully, it seems reasonable. After all, Yi Feng awakened this morning, and according to the rules, he had to do the trial in the afternoon. The location is naturally the World of Warcraft forest, so it seems to have been solved by Yi Feng easily, and it seems to be very a normal hammer. When I think about it, Yi Feng had such strength when he first awakened, half-step B-level power when he woke up, and had such terrifying combat power. In other words, Yi Feng not only has half-step B-level strength from the moment he awakens, but is far superior to his peers. And in a short period of time, his strength has reached the mid-B level. When everyone heard this, they were numb. He stood there with a blank expression on his face, looking straight at Yi Tian. At this time, Yi Tian naturally noticed everyone's gaze, which made Yi Tian come back to his senses instantly. Put away his thoughts and turned his head slightly to look. Looking at the people present, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Why are these people looking at him? He is not Yi Feng. Although Yi Feng is his child, I, Yi Tian, still can't stand it when you guys look at me like this. Hey. Don't worry, they are all worthy of our trust. After all, after the accident in the secret realm, these people came here spontaneously. Trustworthy. You, if you care, you will become chaotic. At this time, Mr. Zhang also came back to his senses. Looking at this scene, he smiled softly. He shook his head and spoke slowly. Apparently he guessed what Yi Tian was thinking. This is especially true when I think of Yi Tian's previous performance. At the end of his speech, he couldn't help but reached out and patted Yi Tian's shoulder, shaking his head and laughing dumbly. At this time, Mr. Zhang and others were in the secret realm. At this time, Yi Mansion. A handsome-looking man pushed the door open and walked in. He came to the bed and lay down directly. I'm finally back. Yi Feng looked at the familiar surroundings and breathed out softly. He spoke slowly. Seeing that there was no one around, Zhang Yi hadn't come back yet. Thinking of his mother who cared so much for him, Yi Feng couldn't help but close his eyes slightly. He couldn't help but smile softly, and then recalled everything that had happened before. Then the eyes slowly opened. This matter has caused such a big fuss, I think these things will soon spread throughout Tianai City. I don't know what her expression will be like when she finds out about this. She'll probably be proud of it. He sat up and spoke slowly. A smile on his face. Zhang Yi probably never imagined that she would take care of her for the rest of her life, and even let Zhao Shui of the Zhao family take care of her during this trial. It can be so powerful. I just hope I won't be frightened by then. But compared to this, Yi Feng is certain that, after this incident, everyone's impression of armor will be greatly changed. Even if the armor cannot be directly upgraded to the point where the four major powers are equivalent, it will be much better than before. Then Yi Feng seemed to think of something, and his expression condensed slightly. Said softly, it's ridiculous to say that armor, as a supernatural power native to Kyushu, is far less popular than foreign powers. He was so overwhelmed by those four powers. The most famous geniuses are basically the four: the paladin, the priest, the Japanese knight and the iron armor. On the contrary, Kyushu's armor was not only ignored, but was also labeled as the weakest. It's obviously not enough to just summon people, which is ridiculous to say. In the world of Yi Feng's previous life, Taoism was no more than Buddhism and Christianity. However, Yi Feng came to this world and naturally he would not let this situation continue. He will continue to use actual actions to prove that the armor is not weak, and is even stronger than imagined. Even far superior to other abilities. And this time, this Tianai is just the beginning. In the future, you will eventually connect with the world and fight with those on the genius list. That is the real way to become famous. Make your name famous all over the world and let these people see it. Thinking of this, Yi Feng nodded secretly. And just after Yi Feng set his next main goal, a voice suddenly came. Ding! At this time, Yi Feng was thinking secretly. At this time, a voice suddenly came, which directly attracted Yi Feng's attention. Ding! The fit of the armor has been greatly improved. Now the compatibility with Xingtian armor is as high as 70%. At this time, a voice suddenly came and appeared in Yi Feng's mind. Yi Feng came back to his senses instantly and subconsciously looked at the creation bracelet on his wrist. I saw a faint flash of light from this bracelet. It was obvious that the message just now was sent by this bracelet. Seeing this scene, Yi Feng nodded secretly. At the same time, he carefully looked at the bracelet and saw that Xingtian's label on the bracelet seemed brighter than before. And Yi Feng also feels that his relationship with Xingtian is getting closer and closer. Transformation has also become more arbitrary and easier to use. And the strength has also been further improved. It is estimated that when the fit reaches 100%, the upgrade can be carried out. And this step is obviously fast. Feeling all this, Yi Feng slowly came back to his senses. He nodded and thought to himself. Then he seemed to think of something and couldn't help but blink. Looking at the Genesis bracelet, it seemed like I didn't do anything just now, but as a result, my compatibility improved inexplicably. But the fit he had fought so hard before seemed to be no more than 30%. And in just a moment, it increased to 70%. This made Yi Feng a little confused and didn't know why. Is it because the armor recognizes me? Then Yi Feng seemed to think of something and looked at the creation bracelet. He spoke slowly, thinking secretly. Could it be that his plan resonated with the armor? But no matter what, Yi Feng plans to do this anyway. Justifying the name of the armor has become Yi Feng's main intention. But now, no matter what, improving your strength is the most important thing. Otherwise it's all just talk. Then Yi Feng shook his head and brought himself back to reality. Looking at this scene, he slowly spoke. A serious look on his face. Then he didn't waste any time and just closed his eyes. Start consuming the magic crystals stored in the creation bracelet. The magic crystal that was apparently taken in by Xingtian's summoner transformed after Yi Feng removed his armor. Just put it directly in the creation bracelet. Buzz. As Yi Feng started to move, he suddenly saw the creation bracelet slowly light up a little. And just when Yi Feng was digesting these magic crystals brought out from the secret realm. At this time, within the secret realm of Tianai, everyone finally came to their senses. After recovering from the shock, although there was still more or less shock on his face, he became much calmer. They believe that after this, they will never be frightened again, so frightened. Unless there is something more amazing than this, which is obviously impossible. Yes, that's what you said. At this time, listening to Mr. Zhang's words, Yi Tian slowly came back to his senses. He nodded and said softly. Then he didn't say much, but led everyone to leave the Tianai secret realm. After all, they can't just wait here. After all, the two nether demons ran out, which is a huge hidden danger. Their mission is important. Of course, the most important thing is that Yi Feng is still waiting for them outside. Thinking of this, Yi Tian couldn't help but speed up his pace. At the same time, Mr. Zhang explained to everyone present that this matter should be kept secret. When everyone heard this, they were stunned subconsciously. I was a little confused about this order, but then I seemed to think of something. They couldn't help but nodded in agreement, saying that they would not tell anyone else about it. Then he followed Yi Tian and Mr. Zhang to walk outside the secret realm. Let's go, don't keep Yi Feng waiting too long. At this time, Mr. Zhang looked at Yi Tian who was in a hurry. He couldn't help but shook his head, and then said to the dean of Tianai College. The dean heard this and was about to nod and say something. However, before he could say anything, he was interrupted. Yi Feng, where are others? I saw Mr. Zhang who was about to say something when he came outside the secret realm. When he saw the scene outside, he didn't see the person he wanted to see. His tone couldn't help but break, and he said with a surprised look on his face. At the same time, he subconsciously looked towards Zhao Shui and Zhao Qing. His eyes were filled with astonishment. If it weren't for Zhao Qing and Zhao Shui's calm expressions, they would have thought that someone would attack again in such a short period of time. When Yi Tian saw this, he subconsciously looked at Zhao Shui and Zhao Qing. Hey, Yi Feng left first. Feeling the attention of everyone, Zhao Qing and Zhao Shui looked at each other. Then Zhao Qing took a step forward and shook his head. He sighed softly and spoke slowly. Everyone was stunned. I left. I couldn't help but look at each other in confusion. Why don't you wait for them? You must know that all the top leaders of Tianai are here. And just when Mr. Zhang and others looked at each other in confusion. At this time, Yi Mansion. Boom, a strong sound of air waves came. Then Yi Feng, who was sitting cross-legged, slowly opened his eyes and breathed out softly. At the same time, he also transformed into the Xingtian armor in an instant. Success. All the initial skills of Xingtian armor have been unlocked. Except for the upgraded skills, I can now use them all. I saw Yi Feng looking at his hands, feeling the state and strength at this time. He couldn't help but nodded and spoke slowly. Yi Feng has not fully mastered all the skills of Xingtian armor. After all, in the armor world, the summoner of Xingtian armor also learned and mastered all the skills of Xingtian armor with the help of Qing Zizi. The same is true for Yi Feng, but it seems because the world is different. This step can be achieved only through the energy contained in the magic crystal. And obviously at this time, Yi Feng directly mastered all the capabilities of the initial form of Xingtian armor under this situation. Except for upgrading and the skills before upgrading, everything will be done. I have to say, this is indeed a good thing. But, strictly speaking, this cannot be considered a success or a failure. I originally thought that this trip to the Tianai secret realm would be able to unlock the two armors of Fang and King Kong. But now it seems that it's still a bit worse. Then Yi Feng seemed to think of something and slowly came back to his senses. He retracted his thoughts and looked at the half-lit label on the creation bracelet, symbolizing Fei Ying and King Kong. He couldn't help but shook his head and sighed softly. He spoke slowly. According to his expectation, it is completely possible. But what I didn't expect was that the two nether demons ran so fast. When he entered the secret realm, he disappeared. Reality has come, and we still don't know where they are hiding. Thinking of this, Yi Feng shook his head. It seems that the opportunity to unlock Fang and King Kong still lies with them. Sighed. But these guys actually want to let Lufa come, so sooner or later they will cause trouble. Now we just have to wait and see what happens. Then Yi Feng seemed to think of something, shook his head, and came back to his senses. Said softly. Then he didn't say much and just fell asleep. Nothing happens, so take a good rest. After all, he was tired after working for so long. At the same time, outside the secret realm of Tianai. Gone. At this time, Yi Tian came to his senses first and listened to Zhao Qing's words. He said with a surprised look on his face. Why is this kid walking so fast? He didn't even leave yet, but he went back first. It seems that Yi Feng has a lot of personality. But that's right, otherwise I wouldn't be so unique and choose the armor ability regardless of other people's opinions. There is no guarantee that the current result would not have happened. If not, Tianai would have been in chaos, and you and I might not still be standing here. At this time, Mr. Zhang also came back to his senses and looked at this scene. He shook his head gently and smiled. He laughed dumbly. At the end, he looked at Yi Tian, pointed, and then pointed at Tianai City. A look of emotion on his face. And the matter doesn't end there. Those two nether demons are also a huge hidden danger. They are a time bomb for Tianai and Kyushu. So you're all going to be in trouble for a while. Without waiting for Yi Tian to say anything, Mr. Zhang seemed to have thought of something. Then he spoke. As he spoke, he looked at everyone present with a serious look on his face. Yes, Yi Tian and others heard this and nodded. Then they left here one after another. In the end, only Mr. Zhang was left alone. Looking at the big hole, he sighed. Then he released his superpower directly towards the big hole, and the big hole suddenly closed slowly. Restored to its original appearance. Seeing this scene, Mr. Zhang nodded. He also turned around and left directly. Time passed minute by minute, and I don't know how long it had passed. Maybe an hour has passed, maybe 3 hours have passed. Anyway, It was getting dark at this time. At this time, Yifeng was still lying on the bed, sleeping. And I don't know if Yifeng was in a daze. In his sleep, Yifeng felt that his body was warm for no reason. It seems that there is some energy flowing in his body. At the same time, he also felt that his right hand was being squeezed tightly by a warm and soft hand. At the same time, a voice slowly reached Yifeng's ears. Huh, it's okay, it looks like everything is fine. Just exhausted. Yifeng slowly opened his eyes and saw an attractive woman standing next to him. A look of worry on his face. But he seemed to be sure of something, and he breathed a sigh of relief. He spoke slowly. Seeing this scene, Yifeng couldn't help but be stunned. Isn't this my mother Zhang Yi in this life? Why is she here? Then he seemed to think of something and subconsciously looked towards the door. I saw that the door was not closed at this time, and then I looked at Zhang Yi's dusty appearance at this time. Yifeng looked thoughtful. Did you come directly to him after you got home? It seems that Zhang Yi cares more about his own safety than his own strength. As soon as I got home, I came to see him. Use your own healing ability to help him check his physical condition. Thinking of this, Yifeng couldn't help but shook his head slightly. Completely different from Yi Tian. Thinking that Yi Tian's attention was focused on his own strength at that time, his face looked dumbfounded. Yifeng couldn't help but laugh a little. Is this the so-called strict father and loving mother? One pays attention to his own strength, and the other pays more attention to his own safety. The focus at the beginning was very different. Fortunately, it's the armor's superpower that's good, and it's not some evil way of overdrafting vitality or spirituality. It's just that it is indeed a bit unusual. It feels different from our powers. Is it unique to armor powers? And just when Yifeng was thinking secretly. At this time, Zhang Yi did not realize that Yifeng had woken up, or that her attention was focused on Yifeng's physical condition. At this time, when she was sure that Yifeng was fine, she nodded secretly. Then he gave Yifeng a full body check again and covered Yifeng's body with his energy. Feeling the supernatural power in Yifeng's body, he is tough and yet energetic, as if he wants to kill all the incoming enemies. Endless changes, fighting against heaven and earth. Feeling all this, Zhang Yi's eyes were filled with surprise. This was the first time she felt such a power. Is this the armor power? Something truly extraordinary. But when Yifeng was sure that he was worry-free, he couldn't help but nodded. Smiling softly, he said softly. With a gentle look on his face, he subconsciously took back his energy. At this time, Zhang Yi suddenly realized that Yifeng had woken up, and couldn't help but be startled. Then he smiled slightly and praised. Yifeng, good job. You are much better than Yi Tian. Yi Tian, who had just entered the door and was about to say something. What do you want me to say now? At this time, Yi Tian was dumbfounded. The whole person was a little dumbfounded, just standing there stupidly. The mouth that was just opened could not be closed for a long time, it just stayed open. The words I wanted to say were stuck in my throat, and I couldn't hold back a single word for a long time. Hearing Zhang Yi's words, he rolled his eyes. Just froze in place. At the same time, I was filled with sadness and anger. Okay, why are you talking about this? He doesn't even know what to say now. I originally wanted to encourage Yifeng and say something, but you are still far behind now. Think about how powerful you were back then, but it was only because of some things that you became like this later. In short, we must work hard, continue to get stronger, and strive to surpass ourselves as soon as possible. The result. If you say this to Yifeng now, what do you want him to say? Let me say something. If you really say that, wouldn't it directly expose the secret? How embarrassing. Thinking of the words he had worked so hard to prepare, they were so direct and useless at this moment. I couldn't help but want to cry more and more without tears. What a waste. Loving mother. Thinking of this, Yi Tian couldn't help but sigh. He slowly shook his head and said softly, And just when Yi Tian wanted to say something, Zhang Yi, who was talking to Yifeng, seemed to notice something. He couldn't help but look towards Yi Tian subconsciously. His eyes narrowed slightly. He snorted coldly. Yi Tian instantly felt a chill, and chills spread all over his body. He looked up subconsciously. Stare. In an instant, he saw Zhang Yi looking directly at him, staring at each other. Li Ling Yi Tian's face stiffened and his tone was direct. You're back, hee hee. Then he raised his right hand slightly and smiled. He spoke slowly, a smile on his face. Yi Feng's eyebrows were raised. Seeing Yi Tian's right foot hanging in the air and his expression stiff, Yi Feng instantly guessed the key. He smiled softly and shook his head. He didn't say anything and turned his head to the side as if he didn't see it. Yi Tian's eyebrows were raised. This guy. After all, we have experienced the battle of life and death together. Why is it like this? He couldn't help but murmured in a low voice. A look of helplessness. However, before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by a voice. Really, why did I hear that the main person behind this incident was Yi Feng, and that someone was just trying to make a fool of himself? Zhang Yi walked up to Yi Tian at this time, seeming to have guessed what Yi Tian was thinking. He couldn't help but smile slightly and said with a smile on his face. Looking straight at Yi Tian came back to his senses instantly. Well, listening to Zhang Yi's words, feeling Zhang Yi's expression and sight, Yi Tian couldn't help but hesitantly said, I was speechless for a moment. If that's the case, do you have any objection to what I said first? Seeing this, Zhang Yi smiled softly. Then he spoke. His eyes narrowed slightly. No, it's not, you're right actually. Seeing this, Yi Tian quickly shook his head and said, it's just that I'm more powerful now, and I'm still in the lead. How could a child surpass me so quickly? Even if it is possible, it can only be achieved with the help of other people. At the same time, thinking about what happened before, Yi Tian whispered in a low voice. Even if it can be surpassed, it will definitely not be possible now. Anyway, it took a while. Anyway, Yi Tian didn't think that Yi Feng could break through to a level so quickly and cross the threshold of a level. You know, the further you go, the harder it gets. So even Yi Feng. But when he thought of Yi Feng's terrifying upgrade speed, Yi Tian felt inexplicably faint. That should be the case, right? HMPH. When Zhang Yi saw this, although she didn't hear Yi Tian's muttering, she still guessed something. But he didn't say anything, but smiled slightly. Then he turned around and left. Walked to Yi Feng and took care of him. Seeing this, Yi Tian couldn't help but be a little stunned. This was not so good for him. Hey, this status, time passed minute by minute, and 2 days passed like this. In the past 2 days, the entire Tianai changed from its previous calmness and became extremely lively. People all over the city were talking about it. Awakening Stone, Trial, Warcraft Forest, Tianai Secret Realm, Yi Feng, Armor Summoner once became hot words in Tianai. Hotly debated. Obviously, since the Tianai Secret Realm incident is such a big deal, everyone knows about it, and it's hard not to know about it. At the same time, it was implicated in the Warcraft Forest and the trial. At this point, everyone in Tianai basically knows that Tianai has a peerless genius, a legendary creation talent. But he chose the armor power, which caused everyone to be in an uproar. Astonished. And once defeated the S-level talent, Wang Ao of the Paladin, and the B-level talent, the invisible Lu Yi. And to defeat Lu Yi, he just used the summoner from beginning to end. And as the functions of the armor summoner were revealed one after another, it immediately attracted everyone's attention and surprise. Yi Feng Armor Summoner has also become one of the popular events in Tianai. It attracted countless people to discuss. After Yi Tian knew this, he couldn't help but be a little dazed. Yi Feng has so many tricks. Especially as some people say that the matters in the world of Warcraft Forest and the Tianai Secret Realm were all solved by Yi Feng, after he gained half-step B-level strength as soon as he woke up. It even detonated the hot spots in Tianai. The 2 words, Yi Feng, were directly listed on Tianai's hot words. It even attracted the attention of surrounding cities. Shocked. And it is in this situation, at this time of night. The 2 nether demons looked at the medium-sized secret realm in front of them and listened to the discussions of others. They couldn't help but look at each other and sneer. Ah, Xingtian Armor Yi Feng. Then he looked at the secret realm and slowly stretched out his right hand. The last one. Chapter 51. I didn't expect that the news about the world of Warcraft Forest and the Tianai Secret Realm would still spread. At this time, in the restaurant, Yi Tian sat on the armchair and listened to the exchanges of passers-by. At the same time, thinking about what happened before, he couldn't help but shake his head. He smiled bitterly and looked at Mr. Zhang and Dean sitting opposite him. He spoke slowly, a look of helplessness on his face. The tone seemed a bit accusatory. If only the two of you hadn't yelled, just screamed. This wouldn't happen now. Sure enough, those people at that time were only reliable in theory, but in practice, it was still very confusing. Not as good as expected. There are always some loudmouthed people who get into trouble by drinking and spread the word about what happened. The so-called crowds and confusion are nothing more than that. Thinking of this, Yi Tian slowly came back to his senses. He shook his head and said softly. At the end, Yi Tian couldn't help but look at the dean and Mr. Zhang silently again. The two of them couldn't help but shake their heads and chuckle. Then the dean of Tianai College shrugged and said, "There's nothing we can do about it, and even if there isn't the matter of the secret realm, the matter of the World of Warcraft forest is enough to make them excited." What happened in the Tianai secret realm just made the excitement more intense. After all, people around the World of Warcraft forest must have noticed the movement at that time, and it was destined to spread. This is a fateful thing, and no one can do anything about it. He looked at Yi Tian seriously. The implication is that with Yi Feng's talent, sooner or later, his achievements will attract people's attention and be discovered by others. Arousing the heat, today's things would have happened even without them. It can't be covered up. Yi Feng is destined to be famous all over the world, even Kyushu, and even the world. Yes, and actually this is a good thing. After all, it's too shocking, so many people don't believe it, and it confuses the public. Those dark organizations will not go to war over this. Besides, this is Kyushu and this is Tianai. I have already told the superiors about this. The imperial capital already knows about it, so you can relax. If you care, you will become chaotic. At this time, Mr. Zhang on the side saw this scene and listened to the dean's words. He couldn't help but nodded and spoke slowly, a smile on his face. At the end of his speech, he reached out and patted Yi Tian on the shoulder, shook his head, and looked very serious. Yes. Listening to Mr. Zhang and Dean's words, Yi Tian nodded. He breathed softly and spoke slowly. If you think about it carefully, it is indeed the case. He thinks too much. How could any dark force directly target Yi Feng? Going to war over uncertain information. You must know that this is Kyushu, not other countries. If you really do this, you don't know how much strength and foundation it will take. So if you think about it carefully, it is indeed the case, not to mention that now that the people above know and believe this, it will be better and more reassuring. After all, Yi Tian still knew who the old man in front of him was. The other party is from Kyoto. So what you say is very credible and worthy of trust. Thinking of this, Yi Tian breathed a sigh of relief. Yi Feng is safe, and as long as no big incident happens in a short period of time, this matter will be settled. By the time those people react, I believe Yi Feng has grown too. At this time, the dean looked at the captain of the escort team in front of him, who had a good relationship with him. He couldn't help but then spoke to comfort him. A serious look on his face. However, boom, before he could finish speaking, a violent shaking sound was heard, shocking everyone present. The dean almost fell off his chair with a direct tone. A look of surprise on his face. This is. He couldn't help but subconsciously look into the distance, with a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. Seeing this, the others came to their senses instantly, and powerful auras appeared in their perceptions. Let them be surprised and uncertain. However, before Yi Tian and others could recover, a voice came. Captain, something big happened. Now there are changes in all the secret realms in our Tianai, and they are shaking. The monsters inside seem to be breaking through the secret realm and coming to reality. Hearing this, everyone present was shocked. His pupils shrank subconsciously, with a look of astonishment on his face. What? Boom. At this moment, a shaking sound came. At the same time, auras that did not belong to humans appeared in the perceptions of Yi Tian and others. It's finally here. Netherworld demons Kusagis and Kuroi, I didn't expect that they would cause such a big stir as soon as they appeared. At the same time, Yi Mansion. Yi Feng, who was closing his eyes to relax, seemed to notice something and opened his eyes instantly. Feeling the two most powerful breaths, Yi Feng murmured softly. Then he seemed to think of something, and subconsciously looked at the creation bracelet, smiling slightly. The wait is finally here for you. I won't let you escape this time. What is happening? What's going on with this sudden shock? There are also these weird and evil auras. What on earth is this? A new aura that I have never felt before. Okay, why did this happen? I heard that this vibration came from the secret realm. Something happened in the secret realm. But even if this is the case, it won't be like this, right? I don't want to scare you when I say it. 1 or 2 secret realms won't do it, but now all the secret realms in Tianai City, including 10 small and medium-sized secret realms, have been shaken. Among them, 3 of them have broken through the limits of the secret realm, and all the monsters inside have come out. Got it. Now the government is organizing personnel and escorts to eliminate the monsters together. What? Quote. At this time, a sudden tremor occurred in Tianai City, which directly attracted the attention of everyone in Tianai City. Everyone in Tianai City came to their senses instantly, feeling all this with a look of horror. The Tianai Forum was also hotly debated, and there was a lot of discussion. I felt confused and even frightened at this time. But as people familiar with the matter explained, these emotions disappeared instantly and were replaced by shock, confusion, and disbelief. After all the secret realms in Tianai City were shaken and mutated together. This was the first time in history. No, to be precise, this is definitely the first time except when the changes occurred in Blue Star. I don't know how long it took for this to happen. Unexpectedly, something that was only in rumors actually happened at this time, and everyone was shocked and confused. Many people even doubted for a moment whether someone was secretly causing trouble and wanted to scaremonger them. But when I heard it at the end, I especially saw the scene where the escorts were all heading somewhere. What followed was a scene of many civilians with supernatural powers, as well as a scene of medical teams all dispatched and busy. Only then did everyone feel that this was true and that what that person said was true. Something happened in Tianai City. Something big happened. Come on, hurry up, let's go and help too. We can't let these monsters cause trouble and enter densely populated areas. Let's go together. Quote. Many people who were far away from the secret realm confirmed that this was true. He also came back to his senses instantly. They all ran towards the place where the incident occurred. What just confused them was, didn't it mean that something happened to all the secret realms? There were 3 of them, and the secret realms were cracked open, and all the monsters inside ran out. So logically speaking, there are many places we should go to, right? Even if you plan to concentrate on solving the secret realm that has happened, you won't just rush to one secret realm. This made everyone a little confused, and their faces were full of confusion. When they arrived at their destination, they discovered that the escaped monsters did not attack here, but rushed towards the western suburbs of Tianai City. And that direction is the second-ranked secret realm in Tianai City. There are peak B-level monsters inside. Seeing this, everyone understood what was going on. It seems that the situation in the secret realm at this time is not an accident, let alone a coincidence, but it was premeditated, someone planned it. At this time, Zhao Qing, who arrived here early, looked at the scene in front of him. His expression condensed slightly, and he slowly spoke. The beautiful eyebrows frowned tightly. Who could it be? Who has the ability to do such a thing? Could it be? Then, Zhao Qing seemed to think of something again. He said in surprise, "It seems that they are the only ones in Tianai City who have the ability and courage to do this. But what is their purpose? Could it be?" Thinking of this, Zhao Qing subconsciously turned his head and looked into the distance. His expression condensed slightly. Hey, I hope he can listen to the advice. Thinking of this, Zhao Qing couldn't help but sigh slightly. But with his personality, he can listen. At this time, when Zhao Qing was looking heavy and thinking a lot. At this time, Yi Mansion. After Yi Feng felt the aura of the netherworld demon, he stood up directly. Get ready to go take a look. We can't let those 2 guys go. However, when Yi Feng walked out of the house, he was stopped by a woman. Yi Feng paused slightly. It's you, Zhao Shui. What are you doing here? Looking at the person blocking his way, Yi Feng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He said with a surprised look on his face. According to his expectations, even if someone stops him, it will only be Zhang Yi. I was afraid of danger, so I didn't let myself go. But in Yifeng's perception, when Zhang Yi's mutation occurred, he left. Before leaving, he checked himself to see if he was asleep. As for Yifeng, he closed his eyes and rested his mind, but in Zhang Yi's opinion, he was asleep. So he left directly. Yifeng probably took active actions with the treatment team. After all, this change will be a protracted battle in everyone's eyes. Many people are destined to be injured in the battle, so logistics, especially the medical team, must be prepared first. And it was precisely because Yifeng knew that Zhang Yi had left that Yifeng walked out boldly. Have no fear. But unexpectedly, he was stopped by someone, and it was Zhao Shui. I was on a trial mission earlier and wanted to protect my girl. This left Yifeng a little confused. With her strength, why would she come here if she didn't want to take refuge? He couldn't help but look at Zhao Shui with confusion and said, "You really want to go, Yifeng?" At this time, Zhao Shui didn't know what Yifeng was thinking. Listening to Yifeng's words and looking at Yifeng's actions at this time, I couldn't help but sigh. He shook his head and spoke slowly. Listening to Zhao Shui's words, Yifeng raised his eyebrows slightly. Could it be that Zhang Yi asked her to come? Knowing that he would leave, he specifically asked Zhao Shui to wait here to stop him. Looking at Zhao Shui, Yifeng thought secretly. Zhao Shui's next words directly denied Yifeng's conjecture. At the same time, he also knew the purpose of the other parties coming here. It seems that Teacher Zhao is right, you will indeed go. Although I don't know that you would want to go to a place that others avoid, but what I know is, it's dangerous out there. According to Teacher Zhao, everything happening now is caused by the two nether demons in the secret realm, so they must be there. And what is happening now will definitely attract the attention of many people. If you go there, you will be directly exposed in the eyes of those people. This is very dangerous. At that time, you will encounter a lot of trouble, and the dark forces will all try my best to deal with you. So you'd better go first. Zhao Shui didn't wait for Yifeng to say anything more, but immediately spoke. He slowly took a step forward with a serious look on his face, staring at Yifeng closely. This is especially true at the end. However, before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Yifeng. No need, I know everything you said. It's just that this incident started because of me, or in other words, they mainly targeted me. Yifeng interrupted casually and paused slightly at the end. Looking into the distance, it seems that you can see what is happening in the distance. Hurry up, hurry up. Put other things aside, and now your main focus is on fighting. Hurry up and gather those who want to recover your strength and treat your wounds. It seems that he saw a charming woman wearing a doctor's uniform and giving orders. His expression was very serious. At this moment, Zhang Yi seemed to notice something. Her beautiful eyebrows couldn't help but frown, and she subconsciously turned her head to look into the distance. Yifeng said softly. Then she shook her head. No way, Yifeng was sleeping soundly when she left. It can't be him. It's probably because things were tense and my nerves were a little sensitive. Shaking her head, Zhang Yi came back to her senses. Then he continued to order. Hey, so it's up to me to solve it myself. Besides, looking back, Yifeng smiled softly. He spoke slowly. At the end, his tone paused slightly. Look towards Zhao Shui. Besides, hiding yourself and being timid is not the style of armor. None of the armor summoners retreated when faced with difficulties, or even cowered in fear. If I do this, if I have the chance to meet those people in the future, it will be very embarrassing. Be upright and fearless is the style of armor. I dare to fight if they dare to come. Xingtian armor fusion. Then he spoke, a serious look on his face. And this is indeed the case. Looking at the armor world, there is indeed no summoner like this. If there is, it is 80% useless. Especially since Yifeng will summon Shira in the future. If he has such a mentality, even Shira will not approve it. Halfway through, the battery ran out. If I go to the armor world in the future, I will make everyone laugh. Thinking of this and finally speaking, Yifeng's expression became more and more serious. And as Yifeng finished his last words, a mechanical sound suddenly sounded. Yifeng instantly transformed into Xingtian armor, then turned around and left, disappearing from Zhao Shui's eyes not long after. Only Zhao Shui, who was a little dazed, stayed on the spot with a look of astonishment on his face. The armor style. Be upright and fearless of everything. At this time, watching Yi Feng gradually leave, Zhao Qing slowly came back to his senses and murmured softly. His expression condensed slightly. Her eyes were full of surprise. This was the first time she heard someone say that. Even those Japanese knights who claimed to be invincible did not say so. She was sure that if they were faced with such a thing, they would definitely choose to retreat and let others do it. At most, it's almost at the end before you come out and collect the results. This is the first time she has seen someone say this. It is really different from others. It is also completely different from the previous armor summoners. In terms of momentum alone, it crushes the previous armor summoners to death. It is completely incomparable and cannot be compared with it. But, why did Yi Feng say it would make people laugh? How can there be any armor to summon people? Moreover, this ability is very special. It is different from other powers. Once you choose it, no one can choose it. So Yi Feng should be the only armor summoner in the world right now. Why does he say that? Do you think the previous summoners were very powerful? I didn't expect him to be so humble. Then Zhao Shui seemed to think of something again. He couldn't help but tilted his head and frowned slightly. He spoke slowly, a look of confusion on his face. Then he seemed to think of something, and at the end, he couldn't help but sigh. His eyes were filled with emotion. Yi Feng didn't know what Zhao Shui was thinking at this time. At this time, he hurried towards his destination. At this time, fighting was already happening in the distance, and the sound of explosions could be heard. Fortunately, the monsters released now are not very strong. 2 small secret realms and 1 medium secret realm. And it's the medium-sized one and the weakest one. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. After all, at this time, Zhao Qinghe and some escorts and civilian superpowers came to fight with these monsters. Zhao Qing waved his hand, and the water suddenly filled the air, directly submerging all the attacking monsters and the monsters in front of Zhao Qing. Directly drowned. After doing this, Zhao Qing breathed out lightly. He slowly came back to his senses. Looking at the scene in front of me, I saw that all the warcraft at this time were sea level, and there were also early B-level ones, but not many. There were only a few mid-level B-level ones, and they had already been stopped by the elites of the escort team. Looking at this scene, Zhao Qingshu frowned slightly and spoke slowly. At the end, his tone paused slightly. After all, if you want to cause damage, it's obviously best to spread it out. What do they want to do by gathering these monsters here? Then I looked at the surrounding scene. Although there were many of them, their strength was not high, and most of them were sea level. So now they have the upper hand. Looking at this scene, Zhao Qing said with a puzzled look. This is especially true when I think of the situation where the 2 nether demons have not appeared yet. I felt inexplicably worried inside. However, it is precisely because the demons present are not strong and most of them are sea level. That's why she, Zhao Qing, was able to do this and kill so many monsters instantly. But Zhao Qing didn't think anything of it. After all, if it were him, even if there were a lot of monsters at the scene, he would be able to quickly deal with them. Then, Zhao Qing seemed to think of something. Slowly coming back to his senses, a figure subconsciously appeared in his mind, a man with a cold temperament. Whispered softly. Then he shook his head and came back to his senses. What are you thinking about? Yi Feng shouldn't be here. Zhao Shui must have been convinced. He seemed to have thought of something and said softly. With Zhao Shui's ability, there should be no problem. At the end, his tone couldn't help but become a little more certain. A look of certainty on his face. Unaware of it, Zhao Shui was persuaded at this moment and lost her mind. He shook his head and brought himself back to reality. I don't want to think about other things, I plan to deal with these monsters first. But at this moment, when Zhao Qing was thinking about Yi Feng. At this time, boom, a sudden explosion suddenly attracted the attention of everyone present, causing everyone present to subconsciously stop what they were doing. He looked over subconsciously. This sight made everyone present look stunned. A look of surprise on his face. Astonished, I saw a white light appearing in the secret realm, rising into the sky. Straight into the sky. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but frown. A look of surprise on his face. What is this thing? The blood and fear are enough, it should be enough for the captain and the others to show up. And before everyone could come to their senses, then two figures appeared slowly, standing at the top of the secret realm into everyone's eyes. But before everyone could come back to their senses, one of them looked at this scene, raised his head slightly, and looked at the beam of light. Feeling the long-lost yet familiar atmosphere, I couldn't help but sneer. He spoke slowly. At the end of his speech, he lowered his gaze and looked at everyone present. And you, as sacrifices, come to welcome the captain and his companions. Not one of them will survive, he said coldly. At the end, he waved his hand. What? Listening to the words of Netherworld Demon Kuroi, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. Still haven't recovered yet. Just these monsters can solve them, don't you look down on them too much. Haven't you seen clearly that they have the advantage at this time? Zhao Qing couldn't help but frown after listening to Korra's words. Subconsciously thinking of the nether demon he met in the World of Warcraft forest, his expression froze. I am Kubisho of the Kai Ming Squadron. Team Leader. Kai Ming Detachment. Is their purpose to summon their head, their captain, to come to the real world? Is this their purpose? Then Zhao Qing seemed to think of something, and his pupils couldn't help but shrink. He said with a surprised look on his face. Recalling that the weakest nether demon has B-level strength, the two nether demons in front of her put a lot of pressure on her, and it is estimated that it will not be lower than A level. And obviously these are just the bottom ones. It's hard to imagine how strong their heads can be. I'm afraid it won't be lower than S level, or even stronger. It would be an absolutely devastating disaster for Kyushu at that time. Thinking of this, Zhao Qing's eyes were filled with determination. Stop them. Clenching his fists, he looked at the nether demon at the top of the secret realm. He said with a firm look on his face. And before everyone could think more, before Zhao Qing could take action. The next scene made everyone immediately understand why the other party said that, and everyone couldn't help but be stunned. I have a new understanding of these ghost demons. I saw. Roar. As Koroi fell, the monsters present roared loudly. Then, under the astonished gazes of everyone, his figure skyrocketed. The breath also increased. Then, under the incredible gazes of everyone, he rushed directly towards Zhao Qing and others. This light, are you planning to summon Kaos and the others to this world? Then when they come, they won't come in a spaceship, right? At this time, Yi Feng, who was rushing quickly, saw this scene. The movement paused slightly. Looking at the light beam not far away, he slowly spoke. Then he seemed to think of something, and at the end, he subconsciously looked towards the sky. If that's the case, that would be interesting. Although Yi Feng cannot summon the fire horse yet, after all, in the original armor world, Shaoshan can only summon it in the later stage. Been through many battles. Although Yi Feng has improved quickly with the help of the creation bracelet, he cannot be summoned yet. But, just settle this matter. At that time, Yi Feng does not propose to stage a cosmic war in this world. Thinking of this, Yi Feng's expression condensed. Sneered. Then he rushed over quickly. Coming soon. The scene of the battle at this time can already be seen. Compared to Yi Feng's indifference, others saw this scene at this time. His expression was relatively heavy. I saw. What is that light? I always have an ominous feeling. At this time, Zhang Yi, who was actively arranging personnel, seemed to notice something. I felt the ground shake, and I couldn't help but come back to my senses instantly. He looked over subconsciously, and when he looked at it, he saw the pillar of light that shot straight into the sky. Seeing this scene, Zhang Yi couldn't help but frown slightly and spoke slowly. There was a puzzled look on his face, and he was filled with surprise and uncertainty. This is especially true at the end. This beam of light gave her a very uncomfortable feeling, various ominous feelings such as evil, aggression, and rage. Zhang Yi felt inexplicably uneasy. And, it always feels like something is coming out. Then Zhang Yi seemed to think of something and came back to her senses. He raised his head slightly and looked at the light that disappeared into the sky. His expression could not help but condense slightly, and he slowly spoke. A serious look on his face. He couldn't help but clenched his fist subconsciously. Hope nothing will happen, he murmured softly, then shook his head. He slowly came back to his senses. Continued to organize people. Naturally, Zhang Yi was not the only one who had this idea. At this time, this scene was also discovered by others. All have similar thoughts and feelings. This is especially true for Zhao Qing and others who are far away from this scene at this time. I saw. Boom. At this time, Tianai City's largest medium-sized secret realm is also the second-ranked secret realm in Tianai City. A fierce battle is taking place. At this time, Zhao Qing's right fist was wrapped in water. Then he blasted directly over, giving a monster a chill. Then he subconsciously took a step back. Breathed softly. The strength of each of these guys has increased by a level. How did they do that? Then looking at the surrounding situation, the strength of these monsters increased significantly. The C-level peak directly explodes with half-step B-level power. The early B-level bursts out with power comparable to that of the mid-level B-level, directly causing the original advantage to disappear instantly, even due to the disparity in quantity. At this time, their side has become a disadvantage. Although his tone was full of confusion, Zhao Qing had an answer in his heart at this time. If it's not the opponent's own unique ability, then it's the power given to them by the rules of this world. And those who can do this are the biggest evil forces in their world. The so-called forceful style. If that's the case, things would be really troublesome. These people must not be allowed to succeed. Stop them. Thinking of this, Zhao Qing clenched his fist slightly. He raised his head and glanced at the sky, then gritted his teeth. He said with a serious look on his face. Then he started fighting directly with these monsters. However, at this time, the Nether Demon didn't seem to want to play with them anymore. It's time to end it, with your blood. Come and symbolize that this planet belongs to us Ares. At this time, Koroi slowly took a step forward. Looking at the scene in front of him, he said coldly. At the end, he stretched out his right hand. The body emits purple light and connects with these monsters. Roar! Suddenly, the aura of these monsters rose again, becoming even crazier. Chi-Chi rushed towards Zhao Qing and others. It's over. Seeing this scene, Zhao Qing's expression couldn't help but change. It seems that there is no support from behind, but it is also true, although it seems that it has been a long time. But only a minute or two passed. Who would have thought that things would develop so fast? He looked at several monsters whose auras were not weaker than his own, rushing towards him. Zhao Qing's face turned pale and he spoke subconsciously. The same goes for others, who can't help but resist desperately. Make a last-ditch effort. But at this moment, Ares, I never thought you people would call yourself Ares. That's right. After all, you guys have always wanted to go back and claim the throne, but you seem to have made a mistake. This is my territory. The fire punishment sword, the fire punishment universe. A calm voice echoed throughout the audience. It appeared directly in the ears of everyone present, and they looked over subconsciously. I saw in the tall building in the distance, standing in red, white and black armor, holding a sharp sword, standing proudly. Said softly, Yi Feng. Seeing this, Zhao Qing said subconsciously. Snort. Then Yi Feng snorted coldly. He jumped lightly, held the fire sword and swung it directly towards those present. Following Yi Feng's movements, lightsabers appeared on the scene one after another. Attack these monsters. Suddenly there were bursts of explosions, which directly overwhelmed the majesty of many monsters present, burning the universe and splitting it apart. Tens of seconds later, Yi Feng slowly landed on the ground and squatted on the ground. Xingtian armor Yi Feng, you are finally here. At this time, Koroi, who had been silent all this time, looked at Yi Feng with a flash of light in his eyes. Whispered softly. At this time, Yi Tian, who arrived belatedly, saw this scene. Especially when he looked at the beam of light that could be seen when he raised his head, his expression immediately changed. It's over. I can't hide this after all. Now everyone will know. I'm afraid that after tonight, Yi Feng's name will be on the hit list of all the dark forces. At this time, the Dean and Mr. Zhang who were following Yi Tian saw this scene. Looking at the scene of lightsabers in the sky in front of me, and under Yi Feng's move. The monster lying on the ground. He couldn't help but feel a little dazed and raised his eyebrows. One last glance at the pillar of light rising into the sky, and then his eyes were fixed on Yi Feng, who slowly stood up, stood proudly, and looked directly at the Nether Demon. They couldn't help but look at each other, some looking at each other. He looked a little dazed. At this time, the two of them only had two ideas. One is, why is Yifeng here? Didn't Zhao Qing say that he would ask someone to persuade Yifeng? I guarantee it won't happen. Why did you show up? It doesn't matter if it shows up, the key is still at this moment. Looking at the pillar of light rising into the sky, I felt the overwhelming power. Having made such a big noise, Mr. Zhang and Dean can be 100% sure that the attention of many people must have gathered at this time. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is the center of attention. The other one is that something big happened. Similar to Yi Tian's thoughts at this time, after this battle, hostile forces and dark forces must know the existence of Yifeng. What will happen in the future, what Yifeng will face, just think about it with your butt. And it seems that this new enemy, the Nether Demon, is very hostile to Yifeng. At this time, Mr. Zhang and Dean had a strange feeling. Why did the Nether Demon cause so many things and make so much noise at this time? For Yifeng. Regarding Yifeng, I want to get rid of Yifeng. Thinking of this, Mr. Zhang and the Dean couldn't help but look at each other. Shaked his head. This is God's will. It's not something we can hide if we want. Maybe this is the hardship that so-called geniuses have to go through. Not to mention him. Mr. Zhang shook his head and sighed softly. He spoke slowly. His expression was somewhat serious. And just when Mr. Zhang looked serious, the situation at this time was indeed what Mr. Zhang thought. At this time, the noise caused by Tianai was too great, and it was indeed noticed by others. Fortunately, overseas, not many people knew about it because Kyushu officials deliberately kept it a secret. But the evil organizations in Kyushu are different. In the world of Blue Star, the dark forces mainly have four parts. The supernatural beasts of Kyushu, the evil dragons of the ocean, and the card-repairing organizations of Japan are all over the world. In addition to Kyushu, there are card repairers everywhere. Driven away by the dark forces of Kyushu. As well as the magical beasts in various secret realms and forests, these four parts. At this time, the supernatural beasts in Kyushu were suppressed by the ancestors of Kyushu, and their strength was greatly reduced at this time, hiding in every corner. At this time, this scene was naturally noticed by Shadow Ba, who was currently in control of the supernatural beast. Looking at this scene, he couldn't help but frown slightly. Netherworld demon, there is a familiar feeling. Could it be related to us? He said with some surprise in his eyes. Then he seemed to think of something, and his eyes were fixed on Yifeng. His eyes narrowed slightly. Armor Yifeng. I didn't expect that armor can still be seen in this world. It's a disaster. But these people are actually enemies of the armor, so there is no possibility of cooperation. If possible, we might be able to bring that master to this world successfully. His eyes flashed and he murmured softly. I thought secretly in my heart. At this time, due to the Tianai incident, undercurrents began to surge in Kyushu. Maybe. At the same time, the dean listened to Mr. Zhang's words. He also came back to his senses and nodded slightly. He said softly, he always felt something was wrong. But I don't know where it is. Maybe it's what Mr. Zhang said, this is the hardship that geniuses have to go through. Only, isn't this a bit exaggerated? Then the dean seemed to notice something, and his expression changed immediately. He looked at the scene in front of him in astonishment and said loudly. His eyes were full of surprise. Not just the dean of Tianai College, but Mr. Zhang was chatting with the dean at this time. Yi Tian also came to his senses and was about to take action to deal with these nether demons forcefully and minimize the impact. However, the scene that appeared in front of him immediately stunned Yi Tian, and his expression couldn't help but change. Feeling this powerful aura, he subconsciously paused. He looked at the two nether demons with some ugliness. Early A level, and it's the kind of ultimate power, only one step away from the midterm. Feeling all this, Yi Tian said with a somewhat ugly expression. This made him feel a little uncomfortable. Why were the enemies that appeared recently, either Class B or Class A? And his combat power is always stronger than him, which makes him one of the strongest people in Tianai City. How can he still mess around? Do you really think that A level is just Chinese cabbage? If he hadn't been well aware of the situation in Kyushu and even the world, he would have thought that level A could be easily achieved and traveled all over the world. But it doesn't matter if you are here, it is also a good thing to deal with you by the way, so as to save you from getting in the way in the future. At this time, when everyone had different expressions, Kusages slowly came back to his senses and looked at Yi Feng. He said with a smile on his face. Boom. At the end, he looked at Koroi. He smiled coldly. Then he clenched his fists. Suddenly, a powerful aura was released from Koroi and Kusages. At this moment, the medium-sized secret realm beneath my feet was shaking. There were faint cracks, as if they were about to break apart. The combined breath of the two made everyone shocked and their expressions changed. Although this kind of aura is in the early stage of A level, if the two of them join forces, they can fight against the mid-stage A level. At this time, Mr. Zhang also came back to his senses. Looking at this scene, he said solemnly. In short, in the early stage of ordinary A level, if you just deliver food in the past, you will be killed instantly. But unfortunately, the dean of Tianai College is in the early A level stage. Yi Tian, the captain of the escort team, is in the early stage of A level. Mr. Zhang, the guest of the Kyoto Guard Group, is in the early A level stage. In short, none of you present are mid-level A level. In the past, they were just delivering food, which made Mr. Zhang, Yi Tian and others look a bit embarrassed. At this time, the mayor of Tianai City, who was rushing over quickly, paused after sensing the entangled aura. His expression changed. How about I just wait for support? He wiped the sweat from his forehead and said with some shame. This breath, so strong, I have never felt such a powerful aura. These two auras are entangled together. Why do I feel that this has surpassed the early stage of A level? See, is it really true? Are Tianai City and the surrounding cities, the strongest ones are only in the early A level stage? Then what should we do? Wait for Kyoto and other places to come to support, even if the day lilies are not cold. Doesn't this mean that our sky and sea are going to be cold? I remember not saying that the people from the Kyoto security team came here to select talents for us to go to Kyoto. That person came from Kyoto, isn't that? I'm overthinking it. Although that guest is a member of the Kyoto escort team, he is only a theoretical guest. His strengths are his rich experience and strong theory. He did not get in based on his strength. In that case, should we go there? Quote. At this time, it was not just Mr. Zhang and others who noticed this scene. At this time, everyone in Tianai City also felt this amazing aura, and they couldn't help but pause slightly. There was a lot of discussion. His expression was very startled, especially the more he talked about it, the more horrified he felt. Surprised and uncertain. At the end, he stopped moving forward with a confused look on his face. Then do you want to rush there? In the past, I was willing to die, but it had no effect. Thinking of this, everyone in Tianai City frowned tightly. Surprised and uncertain. But at this moment, look, what is that? This is a live broadcast. What kind of warrior is it? At this time, he even ran to live broadcast, or he was still in the mood to live broadcast. How much he loves live broadcast. My heart is so big. But who is that armor that I have never seen before, and why is he there? Do we have such a person in Tianai? Stupid, that is Master Yi Feng Yi, you don't even know this. It could be him. Why is he here? Quote. At this time, someone seemed to have discovered something and couldn't help but take out his mobile phone and look at it. Looking at the live broadcast reminder on my phone, I couldn't help but exclaimed. It directly attracted the attention of many people, and more people poured into the live broadcast room. Looking at this high-definition picture, there is no doubt that it was definitely shot live, and it was not far away. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned and exclaimed, "Who is this person with such a big heart that he still plays live broadcast at such a time? Are you really not afraid of death?" But seeing the rising popularity, everyone was stunned. Sure enough, as long as a person is not afraid of death, he is invincible. At least, that's the case with live broadcasts. But then, everyone seemed to find that in the middle of the battlefield, there seemed to be a new type of armor that they had never seen before. He couldn't help but said with a surprised look on his face. His eyes were full of astonishment, especially after learning who this person was. Why is Yi Feng here? Isn't this dangerous and life-threatening? Yi Feng. At this time, Zhang Yi naturally saw this scene. looking at the live broadcast screen. He looked stunned for a moment, then spoke subconsciously. His tone was full of worry, and just when everyone's expressions were different, at this moment in the scene. Zhao Qing looked at his friend and bestie Wang Shui, who was holding up his mobile phone with great interest and turning on the live broadcast. His eyes were full of excitement. Seeing this scene, Zhao Qing couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. What time of day is it now, and you are still in the mood to start a live broadcast? He sighed softly and said somewhat speechlessly. Although I know you love live broadcasting, you still play live broadcasting at this time. It's too exaggerated. HMPH. Because of this, we have to live broadcast. Maybe this is the last time of our lives. If I don't take advantage of it early, I will never have another chance in the future, let alone being so popular now. This is definitely the pinnacle moment of my life. I will have no regrets even if I die, woo woo woo. Wang Shui heard this and snorted softly. She spoke slowly, showing Zhao Qing her backstage as she spoke. The number of fans immediately increased. Seeing this scene, Zhao Qing couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. But then after hearing Wang Shui's last words, his expression became a little heavy. At the same time, he subconsciously looked around, his expressions a little gloomy. Obviously everyone present had similar thoughts. I'm afraid there's no chance. They thought that Yi Feng appeared tyrannically and destroyed many monsters, and the appearance of the captain and the others made them excited. I thought things were coming to an end, but I didn't expect this nether demon to be so powerful. In particular, haha, how about it, a surprise? And that's not all, we are fully here. At this time, Koroi took in the expressions of everyone present. He snorted coldly, then his eyes were fixed on the expressionless Yi Feng, and he slowly spoke. At the end, he waved his hand. Then under everyone's shocked eyes, black shadows appeared behind Kusages and Koroi. Exudes a powerful aura. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. This is the strongest monster in other secret realms. I didn't expect that they actually brought these monsters out, so to speak. At this time, Yi Tian saw this scene. Looking at the monsters standing beside these nether demons. 3 half-step A levels and 4 B level peaks. His expression condensed and he held his hands tightly. He said with a solemn expression. At the same time, he said the last thing and subconsciously looked at the low-level monsters that broke through the secret realm. He originally thought that the other 7 secret realms would be like these 3 secret realms, with all the monsters coming out. So I specially divided my troops to guard there, but now it seems that those vibrations were only caused by these nether demons bringing out the most powerful monsters from the secret realm. In other words, Yi Tian and the others were weakened in disguise. Cunning guy. Thinking of this, Yi Tian said angrily. Admittedly, Yi Tian just thought too much. Kusages and Kuroi want to be more chaotic and want to release all those monsters. But their abilities are really not enough and they are beyond their capabilities. Opening 3 low-level secret realms and controlling 7 powerful monsters is already their limit. Nothing else can be done. And just this cost them a lot of energy. But even so, it's enough to deal with you. At this time, Kusages looked at Yi Feng. He said coldly. Then with a big wave of his hand, the 7 monsters standing behind Kusages rushed towards Yi Feng. He really shouldn't have come. Seeing this scene at this time, Zhao Qing sighed softly. He said with a look of dismay. Then I was thinking about going over and blocking him to see if I could buy Yi Feng time to leave. However, at this moment, the next scene made Zhao Qing dumbfounded and he froze on the spot. It also made Yi Tian, who was about to take action and fight to the death, stop what he was doing, with a dazed look on his face. This is, I saw, haha, more than people. Just in time to practice with you and test my current strength. Try this trick. Attack technique 8 position displacement. Yi Feng looked at this scene and sneered. He said with a look of disdain. Then put your palms together and rotate in a Tai Chi shape. Then the last words of Yi Feng fell. Suddenly, in the shocked eyes of everyone, 8 Yi Feng and 8 Xingtian armors appeared in an instant. I'm not afraid of being outnumbered. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces were filled with disbelief and shock. There are 8 Yi Feng and 8 Xingtian armors. 8 Yi Feng, 8 Xingtian armor. I am not wrong, right? At this time, it was not just Zhao Qing and Yi Tian. Wang Shui, who was currently live broadcasting with a smile on his face and didn't know whether he was crying or laughing, saw this scene. Can't help but be stunned. He looked dumbfounded and said with a look of astonishment. His expression was so unbelievable that he couldn't help but wipe his eyes subconsciously. I wonder if I saw it wrong. A second ago, I thought Yifeng was going to die. At the same time, I couldn't help but feel sad in my heart. The good Master Yi, the infinitely bright Master Yi. It is said that Mr. Yifeng is very talented and has amazing strength, but now. She was very sorry at that time and her heart was full of sadness. Therefore, in order to record this moment, record the fall of a peerless genius. At the same time, it also allows more people to see the fall of a genius. After all, this is also a very meaningful thing. However, she hasn't recovered from her sadness, but you showed me this trick. 8 identical selves were directly separated, and they were all very strong. Seeing this scene, Wang Shui opened her mouth and stuttered. A look of disbelief. I don't know how to express my feelings at this time. Especially when Yifeng summoned 8 of himself and directly suppressed the monsters. Even more so, his mouth was wide open. Not only Wang Shui, but also others at this time. His expression was very shocking. At this time, the live broadcast room exploded with heated discussions. Did I read that right? Are there 8 young masters Yi? What kind of skill is this? I've never seen it before. A clone, it doesn't look like it either. They are so strong. 8-bit migration. Look, those monsters are almost killed. No, some monsters are gone. Quote. He said with a look of surprise and uncertainty. Previously, they thought Yifeng was dying and his life was in danger. Some fans who have a good impression of Yifeng and admire Yifeng even cover their eyes subconsciously. Can't bear to look at it. But what I didn't expect was that this would be the result. An incredible look on his face. Especially when you see how powerful these other Yifengs are. Especially when I saw Yifeng suppressing these monsters and fighting them, I became even more surprised and suspicious. His expression was very shocked. I saw, At this time, Yifeng is using 8-bit shifting. 8 of myself appeared in an instant. See this scene. The attacking monsters were dumbfounded, their faces full of confusion. Why do so many of these nice guys suddenly appear in front of me? And none of them have weak auras. You can still play like this. Make sure there is no cheating. But it was too late to retreat now, so they could only bite the bullet and rush towards Yifeng. When Yifeng saw this scene, he sneered. Then he advanced instead of retreating and attacked directly. 8-position migration is a method of using one's mind to create a large number of clones to attack. Each one has a strong strength and will not differ too much from the original body. In the original book, this trick was used to beat 2 nether demons to death. It's a powerful move, but for some reason, seemingly because of funding, it rarely happens. But this is the real world, so there is no such restriction. You can use it however you want. So under the horrified eyes of everyone and the dumbfounded eyes of the monster. Directly surround these incoming 7-headed monsters. Keep slapping them. Then under the horrified eyes of everyone, these monsters were directly beaten to pieces. You can't die anymore. After doing this, Yifeng directly took back his clone consciousness. Whoosh! With a soft sound, the phantom returned directly to one body. Then Yifeng stood proudly. The nether demons Kusagis and Kuroi looked directly at the top of the secret realm with cold faces and gloomy expressions. Gudong. And everyone looked at what was revealed as Yifeng retracted his figure. Looking at the monster that was turned into a pulp, looking at 3 half-A level monsters and 4 peak level B monsters just gone. He was immediately killed. Looking at Yifeng standing proudly, he couldn't help but swallowed subconsciously. There was a look of surprise and uncertainty on his face. How strong is he? Fortunately, nothing happened. It seems that Yifeng has grown up. He can already take care of himself and protect himself. It's not like before, we don't need to protect you anymore. At this time, watching this scene, watching Yifeng beat these monsters to death with ease, watching these beasts charging toward Yifeng with great momentum, they were surrounded by Yifeng instead. Then they all clapped their hands and beat them to a pulp. Zhang Yi, who was originally nervous, slowly came back to her senses and breathed out softly. He wiped his eyes and smiled. He spoke slowly. He had a smile on his face and looked very serious. Especially at the end, even more so. His eyes were full of emotion. Yi Feng, who used to need to be protected by himself, has grown up and is now independent and has the ability to protect himself. He is also among the strong in Tian'ai City. Thinking of this, the smile on Zhang Yi's face became brighter and brighter. The members of the treatment team who were busy around them looked at Zhang Yi's smile. They couldn't help but be stunned. What happened? How could you be so happy? And also at this moment, they couldn't help but stopped what they were doing and gathered around. Looked up. This sight shocked everyone present. There are many corpses of Warcraft directly on the screen, especially the 7 thick pieces of Warcraft flesh, which are very conspicuous. Especially Yi Feng's shape is even more eye-catching. Many members of the medical team were shocked and suspicious. That person should be Captain Yang's child. I heard that he chose armor, and he also has the legendary creation talent. Now it seems that it is indeed true. Young Master Yi has solved all these monsters. Is it so powerful? I heard that he solved the problems in the Warcraft Forest and the Tian'ai Secret Realm. Really, is it so powerful? I remember that the situation was not very dangerous. That's right, you've just been obsessed with work, so you don't know, that's what happened. See, quote. There was a lot of discussion. His expression was very shocked, especially at the end. The more so, many serious women who were only busy with medical treatment were greatly enlightened, and all kinds of exclamations suddenly came from the scene. The tone was full of surprise. At the same time, he looked at Zhang Yi with eyes full of envy. It would be great if my own children were this good. Mr. Yi is worthy of being Mr. Yi. Zhang Yi felt even more happy, and at the same time slowly came back to her senses. His eyes couldn't help but be filled with worry. After all, the 2 masterminds, the nether demons, have not been solved yet. It didn't end there. He couldn't help but look at Yi Feng with a worried look. However, before Zhang Yi could say anything, what happened next made Zhang Yi freeze in place. It also made everyone who was talking about it listen instantly. Look, what is that? What a dazzling light. His expression was full of shock. Not just them, but everyone present as well. I saw. Gudong. At this time, when everyone had different expressions. At this time, Yi Tian slowly came back to his senses and swallowed hard. Looking at Yi Feng with a look of surprise. He stopped trying to help. At that moment, he felt something. It seemed that even he would be killed instantly by that move just now. Shaking his head, Yi Tian came back to his senses and waved away these miscellaneous thoughts. Then I wanted to help. However, at this moment, a strong palm pressed directly on Yi Tian's shoulder. Stopped Yi Tian's movements. Yi Tian couldn't help but pause. He turned his head slightly and saw Mr. Zhang looking at him seriously. Seeing this scene, Yi Tian couldn't help but frown. He looked at Mr. Zhang with a puzzled face. I don't know why the other party stopped me. No need to go there. Yi Feng's strength is not that simple. His strength is more than that, just keep watching. Seemingly seeing Yi Tian's confusion, Mr. Zhang looked towards Yi Feng. He said with a deep look on his face. Yi Tian frowned deeply. But, I was about to say something, but at this moment. Boom, an explosion sound suddenly came, causing Yi Tian to look over subconsciously. Looking at the situation at this time, his pupils couldn't help but shrink. A look of surprise on his face. How can this be? Not only Yi Tian, but everyone present was like this, looking at this bright light. An incredible look on his face. I saw, just when everyone was shocked and confused, with different expressions. At this time, Yi Feng took back his clone consciousness. He looked at Kusajis and Kuroi. Yi Feng. At this time, Kusajis and Kuroi also recovered from Yi Feng's strength. Looking at Yi Feng, his expression condensed slightly. He spoke slowly, a look of coldness on his face. Then they looked at each other and nodded slightly. He landed directly on the ground and looked at Yi Feng with a cold face. You are stronger than we thought, Yi Feng. But that's about it. Then Kusajis slowly stepped forward and pointed at Yi Feng. He said coldly. However, before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Yi Feng. This is what I'm giving you too. You want to delay time, but I won't give you this chance, so let's make a quick decision. Originally, this move should be used last, but with my strength and your current state, there is no problem at all. I won't let you escape this time. Quick victory. Yi Feng waved his hand and interrupted, a look of coldness on his face. What? Listening to Yi Feng's words, Kusajis and Koroi couldn't help but be surprised. At this time, they have an illusion. They seem a bit like fertilizer that comes to deliver vegetables, passerby. Do you want to? Then Kusajis seemed to think of something, and his eyes couldn't help but be surprised. Seeing Yi Feng clenching his fists, looking at Yi Feng's movements, he said with a look of astonishment. The tone was full of panic. Then he was about to pull Koroi to run away together and leave here. However, late, under the horrified eyes of everyone, Yi Feng slowly stretched out his palm, and at the same time, an interface burning with flames appeared instantly, blocking the way of Kusajis and Koroi. Heaven and Earth's ultimate punishment and heavenly killing technique. As Yi Feng finished speaking, a powerful interface burning with blazing flames suddenly appeared in everyone's eyes. Shroud Kusajis and Koroi. Seeing this scene, everyone present and watching the live broadcast were shocked. This is heaven and earth are infinite. A world of its own. Looking at this scene, Mr. Zhang slowly spoke. The sound reached the ears of everyone present. Everyone was shocked. A world of its own. The world is infinite. Xing Tian's ultimate killing technique. Big move. His eyes were full of shock. I read that right. Self-contained in a world of its own. In the real world, does it form a relatively independent plane alone? So strong, I didn't expect Yi Feng to have such a move. And what's going on with that blazing fire? Just when I saw it, I felt a burning sensation, as if my soul was burning. Judgment from the soul. See, quote. At this time, everyone in the live broadcast room slowly came to their senses. Looking at the scene in front of him, he said with a look of surprise. This was especially true when hearing Mr. Zhang's murmur. Especially looking at the boundary made of fire. The fire seemed to come from hell, giving them a sense of pain in their souls. Someone is judging them, torture from the soul. The expression is very shocking. Surprised and doubtful. Not just them, but others too at this time. Especially everyone present had such a profound feeling. Zhao Qing, do you feel that the flame seems to be very unusual? Isn't Master Yi Feng's move similar to a judgment-type skill? Just for a moment, my soul felt like it was gone. At this time, Wang Shui slowly came back to his senses. Looking at the scene in front of him, he swallowed subconsciously. He took a few steps back and said with a surprised look on his face. At the end of Yu Qi's words, he even subconsciously patted his chest. There is lingering fear in my heart. However, Zhao Qing seemed not to hear Wang Shui's words. He just looked straight at the scene in front of him. Yi Feng looked at the flame field seriously, then seemed to think of something and couldn't help but smile softly. Is heaven and earth infinite? A place formed by the power of heaven and earth. It's really yours. Yi Feng, how many skills and powerful powers do you still hide? What is the limit of your power? Looking at Yi Feng, his expression condensed slightly. He spoke slowly, a serious look on his face. At the end, he couldn't help but sigh. I was filled with emotion. I didn't expect Yi Feng to have this trick. I've never seen him use it before. At the same time, Yi Tian saw this scene. He took a breath and relaxed his body. Then he spoke slowly. I guess I want a quick victory. I can feel that this move is not easy. The auras of those two nether demons have become much weaker. At this time, Mr. Zhang saw this and slowly put his hand down from Yi Tian's body. Listening to Yi Tian's words, he nodded slightly. Then he looked at the scene in front of him, and looked at the flames. In this night, it was like a firelight, lighting out the entire scene. Looking at Yi Feng in the field, he slowly spoke. A serious look on his face. Does this restrain them? When Yi Tian heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. He said with a surprised look on his face. Then he seemed to think of something, and subconsciously looked up at the sky. Looking at the gloomy sky, he looked thoughtful. It's really time to make a quick decision. And this move can obviously end the battle faster. Yes, I think so. And Yi Feng's strength is probably not that simple now. Then Mr. Zhang seemed to have thought of something, and then added. And just when everyone had different expressions. At this time, Kusajis and Kuroi glanced at the surrounding situation with gloomy expressions on their faces. One of the judgment moves designated by the tribunal of the underworld. Looking at this scene, Kusajis said with a gloomy expression. Especially when he felt the flames around him, which seemed to be burning his skin, it made him feel very uncomfortable. And more importantly, here, it felt like he was facing the supreme judge, giving him a strong sense of pressure in his heart. Especially since they also symbolize anger, which is very bad for the two of them. Restrain them firmly. It seems that he is determined to deal with us as soon as possible. At this time, Kuroi looked at this scene and said with a gloomy face. And this is indeed the case. With Yi Feng's strength, he can naturally defeat them directly without any special killing skills. Like QB Shu, but these two nether demons joining forces are indeed difficult to deal with. And Yi Feng could feel that they would succeed soon. If they continued to delay, Lufa would come with the 3 captains and his army. That's not good, so just use this move to suppress them and achieve a quick victory. But don't underestimate us, we are also in Captain Kuss after all. Then Kusajis and Kuroi came to their senses. Looking at Yi Feng, he said coldly. However, before he finished speaking, he was directly interrupted by Yi Feng. Obviously Yi Feng didn't want to talk nonsense to them. Ah, Yi Feng let out a cold chuckle, then put his palms together and squatted slightly. He rushed directly towards Kusajis and Kuroi. Chenkin takes the devil's hand. Before Kusajis and Kuroi could recover, they were directly photographed. Passed through Kusajis and Kuroi. Then, under the astonished eyes of everyone, they summoned the fire sword and the fire electric gun one after another. Fire sword technique. Pyrotechnic gun Xingtian light explosive bomb. Finally, under Yi Feng's flash bomb, the 2 ghost devils exploded directly before they finished speaking, turning into 2 crystal stones on the spot. Then, under Yi Feng's operation, the 2 crystals were sucked directly into the summoner, along with the surrounding magic crystals. The surrounding flames slowly dissipated, leaving only Yi Feng standing proudly. It was as if nothing had happened just now. Sure enough, I guessed it right. At this time, Yi Feng's strength should have reached the early stage of A level. That's why we can kill those monsters instantly, and we can kill the suppressed nether demon instantly. At this time, Mr. Zhang slowly came back to his senses. Looking at this scene, he breathed a sigh of relief. He spoke slowly, a look of amazement on his face. At the end, his eyes were filled with emotion. When Yi Tian heard this, he was instantly stunned. He looked at Mr. Zhang dully, with a look of astonishment on his face. What? You were right. At this time, Yi Feng is already in the early stage of a level. You sure? This is the same level as me. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe my channel.